make a decision.
And then move forward from there. So the first thing we need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is take ownership of where we are. And I think that's one of the hardest steps to make, is the ownership piece, and then the moving forward is your next big hurdle to overcome.
And you'll move one step at a time.
One step at a time.
You'll move to the next step and you'll see, does that work? Was that a good decision? Maybe, maybe not. And then if it wasn't, then you make a different decision. And you'll figure it out along the way as you go. Having a coach oftentimes helps that.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. Having a coach would definitely help.
But sometimes people need to go through the journey by themselves. They're not ready to open themselves up. Their situation might be so complex and that they don't want to invite somebody into that situation yet. So, but everybody can start on their own and move forward on their own, whether they work with a coach or not. You might get there faster with a coach, but you can still get there regardless of whether you have a coach or not.
Right. And go to the website. Go to Ari's website. She invited you. Go to her website. Check her out. See what she has on her website. See what resources she has. Get her newsletter and see if you agree with what she's saying. And if you do, I would suggest you hit her up and see if you two, can work together and if she can coach you. Because definitely, like you said, and the other coaches that I've had on have said the same thing. If you are an athlete, you have a coach. So if you want to be successful, financially, why not have a coach? It just makes total sense. That you want to get to where you want to go, have someone who is an expert in that area help you get there.
Absolutely.
And accountability is everything. If you don't have someone to be accountable to, some people are just accountable to themselves, and that's great, but that's a very small number. That's a very, very small number of people. Most people need an accountability partner or an accountability coach, someone so that, they see the progress you're making and, they're supporting you through that.
And your kids can be your accountability partner. I tell parents.
My kids were.
If you are struggling financially and like most parents have a tendency to spend more money than you should on your children for stuff that they don't really need,
Oh, of course.
Then talk to your kids about it. Say, hey guys, we don't have as much money as I would like, and I need to cut back a little bit. I'm going to challenge you guys to help me. And kids will be like, oh my God, that's such a great, you're involving them and so they're learning about finance, and you're being honest with them about finances, and you're challenging them to help you stay on track. And let me tell you, kids will do that. They'll be like, Mom, you can't spend this money. I don't need it. And it's amazing how things will change, because you may have thought that you needed to buy this for them in the past, but all of a sudden your kids are encouraging you to move forward. So use your kids, use your cousin, use anybody who you trust to be your accountability partner. You don't necessarily have to have a coach. Right.
And your children, that's a good one, because in doing that, you're also training them, in the right way to look at the resources that they have and not to overspend in certain areas. I know I've taught classes, and, I use an example, and the person will realize that they're using 25% of their income to buy this one item, and then 50% of their income is going to their household, rent, light and gas and all that. And then the little bit that's left, and they wonder why they're broke every month. And you're buying this one item that's taking 25% of your income, and you don't realize that you're doing it until you write it down.
Exactly. Write it.
And please write it down.
You will hear me say that over and over and over again.
I do too.
Write it down.
Write it down.
Track your spending.
Yes.
If you want something, write it down.
Write it down.
And
it will stop you.
It will stop you. And there's also a statistic about the fact that writing it down, and I unfortunately I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's a very high percentage. When you write something down, you are much more likely to achieve it by simply writing it down, because what it does is it sort of stores itself in your subconscious.
That's
and
right.
Whether you realize it or not, you're sort of moving towards it.
Towards it.
And it's just that simple act of don't type it, write it
Write
down.
it down. Okay, so take your hand with a pencil or pen and write it on a piece of paper. I know that's a concept that we we don't hardly use anymore, but actually write it down.
If you have to make a note on your phone, that's fine. But then later on, go ahead and write. Maybe it's the energy that you're and the you know, I don't know. There was a study at Northwestern University a few years back, and what they did is they had a classroom, and they divided the class in half, and they had half the class take notes on a computer and half the class take notes by hand. And when they tested, the people who took notes by hand tested it way higher because they had retained more information, whereas the people who had taken notes on their phones or iPads or computers retained a lot less, because you disconnect, because you're actually sort of focusing on the letters and typing, and not actually, when you're writing, you're focusing on what you're writing, and you're focusing on what's being said. So write it down.
Write it down. Everyone, write it down. Give us your website again, Ari.
It is www.themoneystylist.com.
Great. You're listening to Miss Charline, and this is Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Check us out on YouTube. You can go to the Finance Bunch and you'll find us there. Also, we record at Accelerated Radio. This is acceleratedradio.com/ARP. You can find me there every Friday at noon from 12 to 1. And we talk about subjects to do with wealth building, small businesses, you know, the resources for them to help increase their income. And today we're talking to Ari, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. You're giving us a lot of information. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Another question for you, Ari.
Sure.
What would you say, how long does it take? So do you think everyone has an opportunity to break the cycle of poverty, do you think?
Absolutely. And it's just a matter of thinking outside the box. To know that you're not limited, to know that you can reach out for resources, to challenge yourself. And so if you want it, you can absolutely have it. And as we were sort of, discussing earlier, some people believe that there's an infinite or a finite amount of wealth to go around, and that if they take their piece of the pie, then somebody else is going to go without. And I come from the school of thought that there's enough pie for everyone. You just have to grab your piece of the pie, and more pie will come out of the oven, in a little bit. So so don't feel like if you're taking your pie that somebody's going to go without. It's just you're capturing your portion of it. And so absolutely you can break the cycle, and absolutely there's no reason that you couldn't achieve what you want to, unless you tell yourself that you can't.
Right.
Nobody else is going to stop you.
And I'd like to add to that just because you see someone else doing what you thought was your unique idea does not mean you should not still pursue it, because everyone's different and everyone's tribe is different. And, people will listen to, follow, and want to be a part of who they connect with. And everyone connects with different people. So don't think that your opportunity has passed. Don't think that you don't still have an opportunity to do something just because other people are doing it. You are your own unique person. And so what you bring to the table will be totally different from someone else and what they bring to the table. So stop looking around and just look forward. And take it forward, because, that opportunity that you are creating, someone's waiting for you to pick up that mantle and run with it. Someone's waiting. So I agree with you. And if there's no limit, then how do we limit ourselves? If in this conversation we're saying there's no limit, everyone has access to wealth. Everyone has access to resources. If there is no limit, then why do we limit ourselves? How is that possible? Do we hit like a self-destruct button?
Oh yeah, we totally do. We
talked about this a little bit, so I want to bring it up. What is that we do that we self-destruct?
We compare ourselves to everybody else, like you were saying, and we go, oh my gosh, I could never do what they're doing. Yet when I look at people, I'm like, what are you talking about? You are doing it. I can see what people can't about themselves. And I look at them, I'm like, what are you talking about? What you're doing is amazing. And people go, oh, really? I am? I'm like, yes, you have so much to offer, and we hold ourselves back, and it's that whole fear thing. It's like fear of getting rejected, fear of making a fool out of ourselves, fear of change. And if you can break through the fear, you can do all these different things, and you'll probably look back and go, my God, why didn't I do that sooner?
Right.
Jeez
We
Louise.
talk about fear a lot on this show. I do. I ask every person that comes on as a guest, I ask them to speak to that, because you have to walk through fear to actually get here.
Oh, well, I was totally afraid to come on the show. I mean, like, being on a radio show for me, it was scary. But what I always tell myself is, don't be afraid of something that you don't know. How about do it, figure out what it feels like,
right,
and then make the decision of what you're going to do next. And so I, at home on my wall, I have a little saying that I remind myself, is that I will not be afraid of the unknown. Once the unknown becomes known, I will master it. And it's sort of that, why are you wasting your time being afraid of the what ifs, you're giving the negative the power to hold you back.
Right.
How about see what it is?
Just do it.
And just do it. Come on, just do it.
And if it works out, fine. If not, move on and do something else.
Exactly.
It's not the end of the world.
No, and you know what? Business owners will tell you, a lot of really, really successful business people will tell you that some of their early things were such failures, but that's where they learned the most important lessons, that they never would have been able to be a success without those failures. Because every time you do something and you go, oh, just that was silly, I won't ever do that again. You're learning what you don't want. And sometimes that's how we figure out what we want, is by knowing what we don't want. Sometimes it's really hard to go, geez, I want this. But when you go, okay, well, I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want, well, that leaves what I do want.
Right. It leaves what you do
it's
want.
sort of process of elimination.
Right.
So just get out there, do it, try something, anything, fail, and be happy that you're failing, because you're failing forward.
Oh, this is good. And so I always say that, your mindset is what divides your ability to be successful or fail. It's your mindset. It really has nothing to do. It has something to do with what you've been taught, what you've learned, as far as in school. But really, it's your mindset that will propel you forward. That's why we see some wealthy people who are extremely well educated. And then there are others who are educated, of course, but maybe not to the same degree. So really, it goes back to your mindset and where you can see yourself going. And so with your coaching session, is there something that you do to help people get past those barriers? Like, we were talking earlier, and you were saying there's a test that you give that shows a person like what their threshold for income is before they self-destruct.
Yes, and believe it or not, it's a very, very simple thing. And actually, I should put this on my website so that people can actually just do it themselves. And what I do is I get you sort of to sit and in a quiet space and sort of think about your life and think. And just sort of channel your feelings. And the first threshold is, let's say, $15,000. How would you feel if you were making $15,000? Some people might go, oh, I make that already. That's whatever. That would, be fine. Or, oh, that would be really hard. And then I say, okay, how would you feel if you make $25,000 a year? And then how would you feel at $50,000 a year? How would you feel at 75, 100, 150, 250? $500,000 a year, $1 million a year. And what you'll find is that every person has a ceiling, a self-imposed ceiling that they've placed in their lives, where they literally, your brain, and if you do this exercise, and you don't even need to get it off the website, you could just write those down and sort of, see how you feel. And people have this stop. It's like, oh my God, I could never imagine ever making more than $100,000 a year. That would be impossible.
Wow.
And you just said it, your brain just said it to yourself. You are making it impossible because you can't even imagine
past that.
So that's where you need to go, okay, well, why couldn't I make more than $100,000 a year? Why? Like, is it because of the current job that I'm in? I could never see myself getting paid that much. Well, what about thinking about other ways? Or, what is limiting me? Why do I believe that I couldn't break this threshold?